this is the Assassin stream. This is going to be the Assassin videos. They'll be up on YouTube very shortly after the stream, hopefully. And this is not only how to play Assassins, but also how to play against them. This video is going to focus not only on the beginner aspect of things, how to get introduced into Assassins, but it should also be really useful for the more advanced players. I'm going to be covering things specifically that I didn't know, or things that I think a lot of the League community doesn't know about these champions. We'll be going over every single champion in detail, going over their abilities, all that stuff. We've got information on how they do in pro play, how they do in solo queue. We'll be talking a little bit about their lore for each one of the champions. We'll be talking about their power spikes, what's their common runes and build paths, all of that stuff. We won't go into a lot of like really in-depth like combos or things like that. There are plenty of great players out there who have very detailed combo guides, and I definitely want to point you towards those people because they are far better at those champions than I am. I'm going to focus on things more from an analytical perspective and from a numbers perspective, and also from a details perspective, so you guys can learn the details about these champions that a lot of people don't know. Alright, so we're going to move on to the stealth assassins. So these are going to be Evelynn, Kha'Zix, and Shaco. And not surprisingly, these are the three champions that are mainly played in the jungle. The three assassins that are mainly played in jungle. We'll talk about Qiyana jungle later. But yeah, these stealth assassins typically played in the jungle. Alright, we are going to move on to Kha'Zix now. So Kha'Zix is going to be the next stealth assassin that we are going to talk about. And I will say Kha'Zix is probably my favorite assassin. It's probably the assassin that I'm best with. I really, really like his evolution system. I really like it. I think it's a really cool mechanic. So yeah, Kha'Zix, I guess, is my favorite among the assassins. So I am going to show probably a little bit of bias towards him in this video. So Kha'Zix was released in 2012. He had some minor changes in 2016. He had a really high presence in pro play in Seasons 4, Season 7, and Season 8. He also has had a decent play rate in Season 9, but it wasn't as high as some of those previous seasons. He is a solid S-tier jungler for solo queue. He has been S-tier for a really, really long time. They haven't nerfed him at all. He's still like a real terror in solo queue if you want to go more towards assassins. His skill floor is not that high. He's not that difficult to pick up. He's really fun. He has plenty of skill ceiling. Like, I definitely have not mastered him, but he feels very approachable as a champion. His jungle clear is pretty solid, and you feel like you have a lot of impact when you play him. The evolutions are really kind of the thing that makes him unique, makes him really, really fun to play. Different evolutions all have different pros and cons, and you're not always going to go the same evolutions every single game or in the same order every single game. So it really allows you to kind of think outside the box when you're playing Kha'Zix, because you can switch up not only his runes and his build, but also his evolution order. So Kha'Zix lore, he is a hunter from the Void. They doesn't really talk about how he got into Runeterra, but he somehow got into Runeterra. When he came over from the Void, he was very weak, and he started eating a bunch of creatures here in Runeterra. And the big thing about Kha'Zix is that he absorbs strength from the prey that he devours. So every single creature he kills and eats, he gains their power and becomes stronger as a result of it. Kha'Zix is constantly evolving and adapting. I think that there's kind of some inspiration that they got for Kha'Zix maybe from Cell from Dragon Ball Z. He definitely has that same kind of vibe where he's constantly evolving and adapting based on who he eats. He is the alpha predator alongside with Rengar. Him and Rengar are adversaries. They're both competing for that alpha predator spot. They have fought each other in the past. They both want to kill each other. Kha'Zix was able to gouge out Rengar's eye, and Rengar was able to deal a significant amount of damage to Kha'Zix. It says in Kha'Zix lore that was the first time that Kha'Zix bled, was when he fought Rengar. But Kha'Zix, his whole motivation is that he knows that if he can consume Rengar, then he's going to become unstoppable, because Rengar is just ridiculously powerful. So he wants to consume Rengar to steal his power. So Kha'Zix is generally considered the weakest in his early game. He is still pretty strong with his isolation mechanic, even in the early game, but you need to be a little bit opportunistic with your ganks early. Having a level lead on Kha'Zix is very important, so you can, a lot of times you want to kind of power farm a little bit with him, but then you want to go into ganking once you have a pretty decent level lead. He has an extremely strong level spike every time he levels up his ultimate. So level 6, level 11, level 16, because that's when he gains the new evolution. Those are all really, really huge power spikes for Kha'Zix, so you always want to play around those power spikes and really start upping the aggression level anytime you gain a new evolution. He has really versatile runes, he has really versatile builds, he has really versatile evolution choices. That's one of the reasons I really like him, is it feels like you can go something different every single game on Kha'Zix, depending on what the enemy team picks or what your team needs. So Kha'Zix passive is called Unseen Threat. So it marks enemies who don't have allies nearby as isolated, and his Q and his W do additional effects against isolated targets. And we'll get into what exactly those additional effects are. He also deals bonus damage, and he will slow on the auto attack to the first attack when an enemy loses sight of him. So if he's in a brush and somebody face checks the brush, the first auto attack against them will be additional damage and will also slow them. So the slow is 25% for 2 seconds. And the additional damage is 14 to 150 based on level, plus 40% of his bonus AD. And it's actually magic damage that he deals with that bonus damage. So even if they itemize armor against it, it won't be effective against this passive damage. This also works with his ultimate. So anytime the enemy loses vision on him, he gains this stack of his passive backup, and that next attack will deal additional damage. So this allows Kha'Zix to basically attack, go invisible, and deal a lot of additional burst damage. So Kha'Zix's Q is Taste Their Fear. It is kind of his bread and butter ability. So he slashes at a target, he deals physical damage. That damage is doubled against isolated targets. So it's really, really good if you're against an isolated target. Makes Kha'Zix very good at ganking mid lane and top lane, assuming the enemy jungler isn't there. If he evolves his Q, he gains an extra 50 range on his Q, and it refunds 45% of the cooldown if the target is isolated. So the cooldown is a static 4 seconds. So if he evolves Q, he refunds 45% of the cooldown, so it drops it to like a 2-second cooldown, assuming you have no cooldown reduction if the target is isolated. One common misconception about Kha'Zix Q is it is not an auto attack reset, but it can be animation canceled, so it is usually good to do an auto Q. There are some other cool things that you can do with his Q, like you can use it with Tiamat or his W, and you can do some animation cancels like with that can basically allow him to burst a lot more effectively. Another reason why people will typically auto Q with Kha'Zix rather than Q auto is that his Q has a longer range than the auto attack. So basically if the enemy tries to run away from Kha'Zix, you're pretty much always guaranteed to hit the Q after the auto attack. That's one of the big reasons why people go auto Q on Kha'Zix. It's not because it's an auto attack reset. That's something that I did not know. I could have sworn it was an auto attack reset, but I did my research and it is not. So Kha'Zix W is Void Spike. So it is a ranged AoE ability, deals damage. It has 1,000 range. That's a pretty decent range, especially for an assassin. It has a detonation at the end of it. The effect radius is 275 range, so it deals damage to anyone within 275 range. And if Kha'Zix is within that detonation range, it will heal him. So this is where he gains a sustain when he's in the jungle. So he can use his ability on jungle camps, and he will heal in addition to dealing damage. If you evolve this ability, it'll add 2 more spikes. So it will go from 1 spike to 3 spikes in a cone. And it also will cause the spikes to slow for 60% and give sight of enemy champions hit for 2 seconds. So this is really good. You can throw out this W right before an enemy champion walks into a bush. It'll give vision of that champion while they're in the bush, even if you don't have it warded. So it's great if you're kind of trying to chase an enemy through the jungle and you're losing sight of them. hit the W, and that way you can gain sight of them and continue the chase and make sure you're not over chasing into a trap. Additionally, if you've evolved his W and the targets are isolated, the slow is increased to 90%. So this is really, really good for Kha'Zix in the later portions of the game. Kha'Zix, a lot of times, the utility he provides to his team in team fights is he throws out these Ws. He can get the isolated slow, which is 90%, and then his team will follow up with other forms of crowd control, because 90% slow basically makes it really easy to hit most crowd control abilities. So it's definitely, when you're playing Kha'Zix kind of later into the game and people are grouping a lot more, some of the utility you can provide is hitting those isolated slows on the key targets. Kha'Zix E is called Leap. I know, not a very unique name, but it's a pretty damn good ability. So it's a 700 range jump. It deals AoE damage where he lands. If you decide to, it also, so AoE damage scales with bonus AD. If you evolve this ability, it gives the leap an additional 200 range. So it goes up to a 900 leap range, which is ridiculously long. That's way longer than almost every champion's auto attack range. And it will also give you a cooldown reset on a champion takedown. So if you leap, get a kill or an assist, it will reset the cooldown and allow you to leap again. So it's kind of similar to Tristana's W in that case, is that anytime you get a champion takedown, it'll reset and allow you to jump to another target. And this is really like a snowball style of Kha'Zix play, where he can just leap from target to target to target and chain multiple kills together. It's also really good if you're really worried about getting blown up, you leap in, assassinate the squishy target, and immediately leap out. It's also very useful for that kind of play style, where it's just a jump in, assassinate, jump out kind of play style. One of the things that a lot of people really don't know about Kha'Zix Leap is he can cast other abilities mid-leap, even another leap. So what you can do is you can leap, use your abilities while he's in the air, blow up a target, reset the cooldown, and leap again while he's still mid-air. So it's a very hard thing to do, but you will see some really, really good Kha'Zix mains be able to pull off this combo, and it's pretty cool to watch. It really shows mastery with the champion. It's another way that you can be skill expressive with the champion. But that's something that's really important, is that you don't need to wait for the leap to land before you use your abilities with Kha'Zix. You definitely want to try and stack up that burst damage as much as you can. Finally, we have Kha'Zix ultimate called Void Assault. It gives him 1.25 seconds of invisibility, and it can be cast twice while he's invisible. He gains 40% movement speed, and he's also ghosted, which means he doesn't get minion blocked or anything like that. So this ability, really important for Kha'Zix, so he can leap in, uses his combo, activate Void Assault to de-aggro the enemy team. One thing you really want to be using with Kha'Zix is you want to use misdirection. So you want to be heading one direction, and then right after you use the invisibility, you go a different direction. So you can people will try to guess where you're going, and you can mislead them where you're going if you change your directions right after you activate the invisibility. It will proc his passive again because he's going invisible. And also, if you have a Duskblade of DRAKTHARR, it will also allow you to reset the Duskblade of DRAKTHARR as well. So the movement speed is really important, allows him to get around the team fight, get around the front line, things like that. If you decide to evolve his R, it'll increase the invisibility duration to 2 seconds and allows it to be cast 3 times. So this is actually pretty huge. Gives him 6 seconds of invisibility with his ultimate. That is massive, and it's really hard to pin down a Kha'Zix who's got that evolved R in a team fight, because he just can basically be darting in and out, using invisibility to de-aggro the enemy, and it's very hard to target him. So in general, with Kha'Zix, you always want to level up your ultimate because it allows you to gain those evolutions. You want to max Q first, then W, then E. You can go a bunch of different keystones with Kha'Zix. Most common is Electrocute. There is a Conqueror build style with him that's a little bit less popular, but it can be very useful if you're going into more bruiser style teams. And then there's some people who like to YOLO with Dark Harvest. You definitely can do that if you feel like you can smurf on the enemy team. You're pretty much always going to go Flash and Smite on Kha'Zix. You definitely want to be rushing Warrior, and Duskblade of DRAKTHARR are kind of your core item. Duskblade works really well with Kha'Zix because of his invisibility. He can proc it multiple times in a fight. Typically, you're going to go a defensive boots, either a tabbies or merc treads on Kha'Zix. You always want to be stacking that AD and armor shred. He can also build some bruiser items situationally. So you're talking Black Cleaver, Sterix Gauge, GA is usually really good on him, that type of stuff. There is also a really kind of, I don't want to call it fringe, but you can also play Kha'Zix in a lane, either top lane or mid lane, and you use Comet on him. Definitely like an off-meta play style, but it is out there. But in general, he's played in the jungle, either with Electrocute, Conqueror, or Dark Harvest. The range for Isolated, that is a phenomenal question. So it says here the effect radius is 425. So yeah, I believe that the range is 425 units, which is not that much. Like, you're 425 range away from your allies a lot more than you think you are. Yeah, 425 for Isolated. I think that's around Thresh's range for his auto attacks. So yeah, the big thing with Kha'Zix is you have to play around that isolation. And you have to be really mindful of what evolutions he's going for, because that's going to determine what type of play style he wants to go for. So Kha'Zix's model changes depending on what evolution he gets. So like his claws will get bigger if he does Q. He has the different types of spikes if he goes W. The wings change if he goes E, and then his color changes if he goes R. So you definitely want to be mindful of what evolutions he goes for. If you're playing against a Kha'Zix, that'll help you identify like what additional strengths or weaknesses he has, what he's kind of going for as far as his style. Especially like the Evolved E. The Evolved E will catch people off guard a lot. Alright guys, that is the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give this video a like. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. If you feel like I missed anything essential regarding Kha'Zix, please leave a comment below. All I ask is you be respectful. Hope you guys have a fantastic day. This is Randomonium, signing off.